Good morning, it's Brian. We are back. It is the art of startup war. Epic, epic, epic people. More importantly, money, huge money. This is early stage startup, and this is the cream of them all. And I'm not saying that. You listen to my other podcasts. I always tell you I like people because we're investing in them. I'm telling them on this podcast, listen very, very carefully, because you're going to get a combination of genius and experience, right? And that means that you have a magic formula to be able to build a unicorn. And we're going to talk through today how you take something which is a huge need in the market, where literally every single company is struggling with, and actually solve that in such a simple, streamless process technology, and then take some of the best experience in the business to be able to drive that home and turn it into what's going to become $3 to $5 million a month in revenue. And I would put my car on that. Welcome, Dave. Welcome, George. Thank you for joining the show.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you so much, Brian. Yes.
And more importantly, thank you for letting me invest, because I think we're going to make lots of money.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
It's kind of a joke, but it's kind of true as well.
We kind of say it a lot. And we're like, you know who's a smart guy? That Brian McMahon. That guy, he can just read the tea leaves. He can see the future, because I'd say you're, outside of people who work for us, you're our biggest supporter, Brian, and we couldn't appreciate it more.
So I'm the second smartest person here. George is the smartest person here, because George saw this, because experienced entrepreneur, exited multiple companies, been around this business for a long time. He knows something beautiful. Now, I'm teasing you all here because you don't know what they do, but I'm telling you, this amount of us cannot be wrong. Are we wrong, George? You saw what Dave was building. You saw the problem in the market. You felt the same as me, right? You invested like way more than me, because you threw yourself back into an enterprise with somebody else that you never even imagined you would do before, but you couldn't resist it.
Yeah, and actually my initial introduction was potentially on the client side. My previous venture, which was acquired by a private equity firm, and I had stayed on through COVID, was also in the B2B software space, specifically in virtual care. And we were having the problem that everyone has is, I know what kind of revenue we're doing, but at the micro level, I can't get the answers to how our marketing dollars are being spent and influencing sales and closing deals with inside the sales funnel. You get a lot of answers about how leads come into the sales funnel, but there was just no information or data around what occurred after a lead got into the sales funnel, and that journey, that buyer's journey from lead to close.
Yeah, but there's a very good reason for that, and that is because CRMs were built for salespeople, and salespeople could give a damn what happens after they sell the deal and bring in the commission. And there layeth the problem, right? We're talking about CRMs, and for those of you who have been involved in customer relationship management systems like Salesforce and Zoho and all of the other ones that are out there, you know this, like, it's used as literally a tool for a salesperson to be able to work out how many inquiries do I put into the funnel, how many come out the other side, how much sales do I get, and how much revenue did that drive. But that's not the problem. The problem is the entire organization are relying on this information, because this is the whole revenue for the company, but it was only made for the dude or dudette who are selling stuff. So it lays a huge problem. And I think what was so fascinating for me is, like, this was an aha moment for me, because I've worked with CRMs for years. I've used Pipedrive. I've maybe used 15 CRMs. I've never had a CRM that I've been happy with. And it's always been because of me, because I've never felt that there's been a CRM that is a management system, that every single CRM, it allows me to sell stuff. It allows me to measure the stuff that I sell. And after that, I try and use it for things which I almost feel the CRM screaming at me is like, Brian, you are not what this was designed for. It was designed for the sales. And when you came in and you're like, no, we're actually going to turn this into this intelligence vehicle, which is going to be able to solve these problems for all these different decision makers in the organization, that they can make great decision making. And it's not just focused on the sales. I thought that's why I've been frustrated for my whole life. because I've been trying to make something happen that hasn't been possible. And Dave, you're the inventor of this. So can you talk us through, from what I've seen, I know, I've heard, and everybody's told me, and what you've done, you're one of the top specialists in the world at working within the Salesforce system. And you're very humble, but I'm not wrong, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, you'd probably be right. Yeah, I think that there are things that I've had a lot of direct experience with that would overlap with other experts who have experience with other aspects of it. I think, to your point, I've had a lot of experience as an administrator. That was how I started. And as an administrator, you're there to deliver on the promise of clicks, not code. And it's a beautiful thing. And it explains why Salesforce goes from 1999 being designed as, a Rolodex, and hey, wouldn't it be nice to look at the pipeline too? And let's do it in the cloud correctly. But also, in providing that service through the cloud, we as administrators were able to do so much with clicks, not code, that they felt that demand and continued to add to it. And so, it's a situation where everyone's only sin was essentially using Salesforce too much and, building configurations and what is known as technical debt to get it to do specific things for each company. And where it really starts getting jumbled up is companies and strategy and operations evolve over time. And so the ability to change that equipment when strategy needs to change becomes a situation where you just keep piling more technical debt on top of itself. And you end up with a pretty difficult situation to do really complicated things. And Salesforce has managed this excellently. We learn from them about how to approach given computing problems. And so the solution tends to be, they enable this rich partner community of which we're a part of by design to help foster innovation that might not otherwise be in their core roadmap, or maybe it's part of it. And then to let that ecosystem evolve, but oftentimes, through acquisition and through integration, that's typically the solution in cloud. But what we have here is a problem that no matter how many integrations or different boxes you try to pile onto it, you don't get the experience you expect as a business leader, as a sales rep, and all the other analyst and investor roles that are going to interface with. And what I'm talking about specifically is that lead to close journey of attribution. Obviously, Salesforce does, many, many wonderful things across, interfacing with customers. So, yeah. But specifically that and some other things similar to that were untenable. And the solutions in market have been unsatisfactory in solving it appropriately, because there just tend to be another box bolted onto Salesforce and trying to do it with integration.
And that's the problem, right? And I want to bring George in 1 second. I do want to just stick on your story for a second, because I had this epiphany. I always used to believe previously that the greatest entrepreneurs were people who maybe had worked for competitors, or they'd worked for incumbents in the space, and they'd said, crikey, if we could just add this or this or this there, so we could make it better. Your position is so interesting because you didn't come in as an incumbent in the space. You came in as a client, and you came in as a client working within one of the most respected and the best companies in Santa Monica, of which I have just the highest level of respect for great people in that organization. And they almost grew alongside with Salesforce. So when Salesforce were starting, this company were starting as well. And this company became one of the biggest companies. Salesforce became one of the biggest companies. So it was a really beautiful synergy watching a company go from a couple of employees to a couple of thousand employees, and watching Salesforce go from, a couple of employees all the way through. And as he iterated, the problems just iterated into worse and worse and worse. And your responsibility was, make sense of this, will you? We need to adapt it. We need to customize it. We need to change it. Please make this something that our organization will be able to use for proper decision making, even if it doesn't even look like Salesforce used to look before by the time we got finished, right? So you got to tinker with this for years, making it better and better and better and better, to the day that you built the ultimate Salesforce weapon for organizations. And we're going to get later on to like how other organizations then saw what you had built and said, oh my God, you don't even need to prospect us. We want this. We're begging you, Dave, please do it. But like your journey to actually learn what the issues were and to solve those issues, as I described, are slightly different.
No, pretty spot on. I think that the important distinction is that what we offer as a product in market right now as MagicRobot is MagicAttribution. And that does an important thing. That is a company, in and of itself. It's a great startup. It is a great product. But the underlying, what I came to find out through, George's help, is an actual operating system underlying the attribution, the layer on top of the Salesforce layer that is still Salesforce, which is MagicRobot, is essentially an operating system that can perform complex tasks. And an orchestration, like if you put together like a mechanical piano's like sheet music, that it does in this instance is MagicAttribution. And so the company that I worked for many years, from 2004 until 2018, was Cornerstone On Demand. And we were a software as a services HR technology company founded in 1999. I joined in 2004, and we were one of Salesforce's maiden customers. And it was one of the original 1999 for free users for 3 months or whatever. And our CEO, Adam Miller, was like laughing when we did a contract with Salesforce for, it was a significant value, in like 2016 or something. And he was just like, man, that freemium model, those for free users, they really upped it. And it was like, no kidding, they really did. But it was crucial to our operations. And I felt like I was involved in so much as a younger professional, 14 years from like employee 35, 36, something like that, up to, 2,000 employees. And then being involved in the nerve center of operations, just being involved with Salesforce. It was like 2005, the CEO handed me the keys to Salesforce. I quickly stepped in a pile of territory disputes, like by loading a list of leads in. And then, for the next 14 years, it really helped. It was my career, because he was like, hey, you seem kind of good at this. And a couple of times he intervened when I like worked for marketing and stuff. And he was like, hey, you seem pretty good. Like I think the sales operations stuff. And so we ended up, we felt a kinship with Salesforce, because when we were selling, this is pre-LinkedIn, I'm dialing for dollars, being like, you want to buy HR software? Why not? Good reason. And it's like, can you direct me to the training department? No? Okay, bye. And, they ended up, it was like when we would get somebody, especially at some of the big corporations that were not forward thinking, and they would say, we would never let our data outside our firewall. And we're like, yeah, but we're talking about like training certifications, which, you'd want to like publish publicly potentially anyway, and they'd be like, we would never let our data outside our firewall. And so, we've got Salesforce, who obviously was, a bigger success and a little bit further ahead of us, but we emulated them in a lot of ways. And by the time it was like my responsibility to make sure things were flowing correctly. And like on the other side, we've got, financial software that we're using to report to the SEC and all kinds of things. And it's like, Salesforce, first of all, helped me get there. Salesforce was like the most reliable thing in that tech stack. And it was because we were using it so much that I experienced and directly made every horrible mistake you could possibly make. And, I should have been probably, much, much earlier in my career, much earlier. Should have been fired, but because of the environment that I was in, and because, I would make the right kind of mistake and be able to save it correctly, it was like we were just overusing that thing.
But isn't that the brilliance that, and I want to bring George in to talk about like how we scale this up to be a unicorn, because what I love about you both, and the three of you actually with Scott as well, is the operational experience, the CEO experience, and the experience of bringing the creativity to a product which desperately needs to be done. I want to draw a line under something that we've gone through so far, and I want to make sure that all investors listening understand this. This is why Expert Dojo invested in this company, and this is why in the current round that we have going on, other investors are investing in this company. Pretty much every company on the planet that is a company uses a customer relationship management system. Everyone, right? Salesforce is by far the biggest in the world. MagicRobot sits on top of Salesforce, but actually will sit on top of many other CRM systems in the world. So when you're thinking of this product, I want you to think of how companies make decisions, right? That is undisputable what I just said about customer relationship management systems and companies. The second point is every single company that uses a customer relationship management system is failing at some stage. And like you mentioned, should have been fired. Everybody should be fired because it's not made to give the information that the companies are actually looking for. It's too hard and everybody's struggling with it. And everybody wants that widget that allows them to go to a board meeting, which is not information which they have to make up based on a perspective that they have, which is biased based on the background of where they come from. Is based on actual facts of where they're coming to. So from the product itself, we'll jump back into it a little bit later, but this is, if everything that Dave says from his years and years of customizing Salesforce to build a management system that turned a company, which was a baby company, into the first, second, or third most successful company in our entire city. Like if that's correct, then we have gold here. And that was my first tick in the box. Yes, we got something really special. CRMs are going to become more important. And even with a downturn, even more important again to make sure we get the right information. Now, the second point was when Scott and George came in, and I first met them over at Expert Dojo. And I know the components that are required to build a billion-dollar company. It can't be just a great product. It can't even be just the timing. It needs to be the merging of great people who are all skill gapped in a way that allows the company to be able to grow the fastest way possible and avoid the speed bumps that come through us just bumbling through because one of us has got one piece and another person has got another piece, but they don't come in for 3 years. And I was like, oh my God, they have the whole team straight away. And so can you talk a little bit about you both coming into this organization and where you saw the gold? And because you didn't come into this thinking, oh, this is a good $30-50 million company, I think I might just pass a couple of years here. I saw it, you discussed it, we talked about it. This in your mind was a unicorn 1,000% for both of you. But the three of you coming together, I think makes it a unicorn. Without that happening, it would have been more challenging. Can you just speak as directly as possible to all of the investors listening as to why you were so bought into it as a previously exited founder, as an investor yourself, and as someone who's just really damn smart?
Well, I think where it first starts is, Dave came to a conclusion at some point in 2021 that he needed to make a pivot, right? As the founder, as the creator, he realized and expressed to me that, listen, I need to go in one of two directions. I've taken this as far as I can. I've got a lot of great customers. The technology is very mature. But my interests, my self-interests are, I just want to keep creating. That's what I do well. That's what I enjoy. It's what I love. I love innovating. And in his head, he's, I need to bring in other people to surround myself with, to really then take what is a small company and look at the operations, understand people that understand commercialization, how do you build a solid growing business? And that's where it all started, right? So he had to make that decision in his head. And to compress the story, I was approached. Like I said, I actually was aware of MagicRobot while in my last venture, and I was looking at it as a possible solution for us. COVID hit, got busy. I ended up exiting the last company successfully, and I was available. So, Dave approached me and said, look, I'd love for you to take a look at this. Here's where I am in my head. And I agreed, definitely let's take a look at what you got there. And I started digging into the tech. There were a lot of amazing claims. And if they were true, this is huge, right? The idea at a high level, the concept, the dream of true revenue attribution, people have been trying to solve that forever. And I knew in the market there were plenty out there trying to do it, claiming to do it. I personally had vetted a lot of them. And they just really weren't delivering on the entire scope of what revenue attribution means, particularly the hard part, which is inside the sales funnel. So, as I started digging into the tech with Dave, weeks and weeks and weeks to pull all this out of his head, I realized, hey, this is what it is you say it is. And by the way, it's better than you might even realize, without going down that rabbit hole. But he did, and as you mentioned earlier, ended up building a dual layer tech stack. And the underlying layer is an operating system that he created in order to fill many of the gaps architecturally, functionally, what have you, that Salesforce was lacking. Not because Salesforce is not an innovative company, not because it's not a great company, it's because the market, right or wrong, over the last 20 years has moved this platform into being the central business system, right, for the entire operation, as we've talked about. And also where all customers are pulling their data into, right? We've all heard Mark Benioff talk about the single source of truth. They accommodate that data, right? They will store it. But in a lot of cases, as a customer, you can't interact with it. No. They accommodate it, but you can't interact with it. And that's where, MagicRobot comes in. And with its technology, is able to mine, normalize, and synthesize that data and answer a host of business intelligence questions. So I went through that whole process with him, validated it. And then I needed to talk to the customers, right? Because he had these amazing customers. It was, GitHub, Paycor, Stanley Black & Decker. And I just could not understand.
Crazy.
Right. Like one plus some contractors, how this occurred. And so I got on the phone
because this is not the way it's supposed to happen, right? It's not supposed to be that you start a company and then the largest corporates in the world call you up and ask you if you wouldn't mind selling them product. It's not. It's just not the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be you're supposed to beg them. They're supposed to say to you, "You're too small. I don't trust you. This is terrible. I'm going to destroy your life. I'm going to make you look like work really hard." But instead, there's like, "Oh, I don't know. We've got a lot of people already asking for it. Maybe I can add this on." Sorry, go on, please.
That's exactly what I thought. And as it turned out, after those conversations, what I realized was their pain was so great that they were willing to try something as risky as a very young technology. For example, Paycor and GitHub were considered beta clients. I mean, they've been around for quite some time, and a few others, applied systems. They, at the earliest versions of the technology, were already solving large parts of this idea of revenue attribution, and they became customers, but they also teamed up with Dave saying, hey, listen, you're going in the right direction. Everyone else has been trying to attempt it. It's either halfway or just not at all happening. The way you're approaching it inside the CRM, because again, we're talking about inside sales funnel, not pre-lead, is the only true way to even attempt to accomplish this. And so they teamed up with him. Now, where most, early founders would have already raised money, Dave just wasn't thinking about that. You've got a brilliant engineer that what he knows how to do is build. So he just kept building and engineering and building and building and building and just doing it on his own, bootstrapped with these, early customers who are obviously also big tech companies. So they were able to give him the right advice and point him in the right direction and give him ideas. So he's been able to take it to a version 4. It's a extremely mature technology, quite large in its capabilities. We're talking about it today in its simplest forms, but it does a tremendous amount on the business intelligence side. And the other half of that story is, my question to those customers wasn't, okay, great, now I understand why you're doing it. Then I went back to Dave and I said, so how are you servicing them? Because these are they're large enterprises and they're going to be somewhat demanding. And what his basic answer was, listen, I built this platform for me. I built my dream that when I was living the problem, what would I like it to be? And I want it to be completely automated. He built so much automation into the system itself. Not only was it delivering on all the data and information, but it's doing it in a hyper automated way to the point where for most customers, when they're serious about getting into micro level, inside sales funnel intelligence, and they implement our system, it's a set it and forget it. It'll run on its own. Once it's configured and installed, which is not a heavy lift, you could basically just leave it alone and it will just run the little robots right inside the system are running automatically, doing all their tasks and presenting the information and dashboards and reports, and you really don't have to touch it. And so what I found out was, because of that, on the operations side for MagicRobot, there was very little overhead. You didn't need a team of tech support people and client success folks, right? Because it just runs and it just works. So
George,
that's what sort of rounded it out.
Just to this point, right? And then I want to bring Dave back in for a moment so he can just circle back around and validate everything we're talking about. And then I really want to talk about where the growth comes from, how we build that. I want to talk about integrating Scott, who's another incredible person in this team, and like how we then turn this into a unicorn. But what you're talking about here is that the venture model as it stands right now is wrong. And this model actually makes so much more sense. The standard venture model is, we're going to ask to raise a bunch of money. We're going to promise a bunch of stuff. We're going to not comply with the majority of the things that we promise. We're going to put it out to clients in a fairly mediocre form. Our clients are going to get a little bit annoyed. We're going to have attrition rates, which are going to be not great. And we're then going to ask for some more money because stuff didn't quite work the way it was supposed to work in the first place, but we promise that we'll do it better the second time around. And if you give us a little bit more money at a higher valuation, everything's going to be super cool, right? And then that leads to an environment we're in right now. And how you've described how Dave has built this is, he says, you customers are the most important thing in the world to me, almost like family. And I refuse to give you garbage. I refuse to give you anything other than more than actually what you had asked from. Because by the way, what we haven't talked about is the fact that none of these people have left. They've all stayed. We're talking like 100% retention, right? Am I wrong?
Call it 99.2%.
99%.
Just
yeah,
retention. Nothing's 100%.
So like everybody stays, right? So they all stay. And then what happens is, because they're so incredibly pleased with the thing that he's building, they pay a fair price for that. And they ask for more things because they're so happy. And then he builds more things and the product becomes better and better and better and better because he's always looking at it. And the company is always looking at it from the perspective of, we need to really solve a solution here, not just build a cash grab company that's going to grow in value. And whenever times get difficult, it's going to fall down again. This is what attracted me so massively to the company, is that I wish every venture backable company was built exactly this way. Obsessiveness about making sure a product fits and exceeds the customer expectations, solves a problem that nobody else had been able to solve. And rather than focusing on being shiny and out there and telling everybody about how great the product is, show it every single day. So I'm going to come back to you in a second, George, because I really want to dig into like where we go in the future and how we build this thing
I do
up
want to
now.
add one thing.
Go on. Yeah, go on.
Just
please.
because
Yeah, please.
it piggybacks on what you're saying. So when I was looking at this, I was looking at it like a venture capital firm would, right? Because I'm deciding whether I'm going to put my life into this. I did my own diligence. And exactly what you said, when I got to the end of my diligence, I said, okay, so I've got no, if I stepped in, I have no big tech build in front of me. It's an extremely mature product that's already been proven in market. It's proven market fit. It has incredible traction. It has customers, large customers that have already renewed 2 or 3 times. They are willing to scream at the sky about us. He's raised no money to date. The balance sheet is super clean, right? Like, it's just crazy. Like, the idea of coming into this, our gross operating margins are 98.7%. So I'm like, this is an incredible opportunity for me as a person that's going to invest myself and also my own money, because I've invested in the company as well, that I'm starting from point E, not point A. That was the attraction. And that's very hard to find when you're talking about a startup that's just now raising seed funding.
Yeah. And I think that's also really nice for people listening here, is that I remember I've seen you speak to investors and say, listen, whatever diligence you think you can do, it is nothing compared to the diligence I've already done in this company. So Dave, what do you feel about having like your fan club here all around you, like little pom-poms and everything? But I really do, I really do love this. Like I do, I'm not like this. I'm a purist when it comes to venture capital. I dream of great companies breaking through again and not hyped companies. And you represent everything that I love to see within this space. So give us a couple of minutes just on are we being fair? Are we maybe saying things too nice? Is this the truth? But be real, not your wonderful, humble self.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. It's literally a dream come true having you both and Scott Hoffman, who's our chief revenue officer, who was, crucial to making sure we found all the resources that we have, including, his relationship with George, brought George on. And it's really, it's very personally meaningful to me, honestly, Brian, and, having met up with you and the Expert Dojo, because, it's like we get beat up for being almost, too perfect sometimes, in that my direct experience with it as it relates to the product is there are things in the Salesforce, platform that, sometimes you're able to program through, but eventually the thing jumbles up. And it was really important to me to make sure, when I left Cornerstone and when I was focusing on MagicRobot, you could do attribution. You know what I mean? You go open some servers someplace else and consume all the electricity you want to do attribution. But what we are doing is fundamentally expanding massively the capabilities of what the average Salesforce subscriber is going to be able to do across all the clouds. So today, it's attribution, and I get it. The market's flooded with attribution solutions that, are lesser than ours. And, to George's point, those customers have been loyal and been supportive to, great ends. And, honestly, like I didn't know the reasoning why. I mean, I have personal relationships with each of them, obviously, but, George was like, they were so dissatisfied, like they were not getting it. And in, GitHub's case, they were looking to build custom, of course, what they ended up having, but along the way they were like, hey, what we should have, if we were going to do this right, you would do this, this, and this. And then they found MagicRobot, MagicAttribution, and they were like, hey, that saves us a lot of time. And that's what the point of it is not, you shouldn't be using like the MagicRobot attribution data to make all your business decisions. You should, but the rest of the organization, your most talented analysts, your most talented developers are then able to go and spend their time creating off of like, this stuff that I felt personally committed to making sure that we wouldn't have to program it again. Like every services organization has some miniature version of what we've got. And but it's not holistic. And I lived it for many years as an administrator, then as a developer, then as a leader over the sales force for a company, and then as all cloud systems with like financial reporting responsibilities. And it's serious business. But Salesforce was very reliable. But even still, it's not accessible to all companies to be able to do these things like attribution. You should just be able to do it.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult. And what I want to just wrap up on is that commitment that, you were saying in the sort of typical startup life cycle, that's the discussion it felt like. And that's kind of what I was reacting to emotionally when you were saying it. That was like the discussion that I felt like was the subtext of every client conversation, every renewal discussion. It was like they were all investing in, I always am saying like, just like they're the smartest, they're obviously the smartest companies in the world. They know what they're doing. And a lot of those leaders were like, we are going to solve this. And the shortest path seems to be involving MagicRobot. And in some cases, they're like, we're going to solve it. They solve it really well. I've tried to solve it in the past. It's a pain. MagicRobot does a great job. We can customize it how we want. And then they've been pure advocates for us because they're so appreciative of what it does and what the future holds for it, because it's in that very powerful, central business system now.
Yeah. And I really like where George says they were so dissatisfied with where they were. So, okay, so here's what we're going to do. We've got 6 or 7 minutes left. I really want George to hit, like, what does this, I want to even throw something in here before this. I am so confident. I believe this company is going to be $1 billion company. There's actually not a doubt in my mind. I would even throw a bet to anybody out there. My car's in the back. I give you 2-to-1 odds that this company hits $100 million plus, right? 2-to-1. Right? How many companies hit $100 million? Not very many. I think it's so friggin' safe. I'm going to go out and buy another car when I win it. So you can all contact me, Brian@expertdojo.com. Whoever it is, I'll do a contract with you immediately. 2-to-1. Never done it before. I'm so friggin' sure on this company. So George, to like safeguard my car, can you just tell us in the next 5-6 minutes, what is the path to going from these 20-25 reactive clients who came in and said, please, we want to pay you money. We want to work it. We want to have this. We want to solve the problems. We were very dissatisfied. We're now deliriously happy. What is the path to taking this from 25 companies to 250 companies, and from 250 companies to 2,500 companies, at which stage we are already a unicorn? And obviously, I know that a lot of this is for Scott as well, and you'll be speaking for him too, but just please talk about as much as you can in this period about the team and everything else. And then Dave, we're going to give you the last minute just to finish off on the vision of what the world is going to look like in 7 years' time. Not even 5, but definitely not 10, because we're not waiting. 7 years' time. What does it look like with you, with your absolute full capabilities? George, kick us off.
Sure. So I kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, at a really high level, MagicRobot is a very mature technology company with a startup operation, right? So the first thing that you have to do is say, okay, there's never been any sales or marketing dollars spent at all. Any of these customers that we have today, they just found organically and through word of mouth. So there's very little to no awareness except amongst, this small cohort of customers. And then with inside of each company, our target user are folks like heads of growth, maybe the VP of marketing, maybe the Salesforce admin, anybody that's actually touching the platform. Those are that are being asked to, hey, deliver me the answers to these questions, right? And so it's a pretty tight knit group of folks around the world that all communicate. And because of that, that's how we've gotten more of our customers over the last, call it 12 to 24 months. So the first step is to, build an operation, a go-to-market strategy, and create awareness, sell, onboard, rinse and repeat, right? And what's great for us is, and selfishly for me, is I've found myself stepping into a situation where really for the next 12 to call it 24 months, we really only need to focus on sales and marketing because we are fortunate enough to have this very mature technology. We have certainly other plans in our pipeline of products and solutions that we continue to want to solve their gaps and holes within Salesforce ecosystem for other parts of the operation that are being asked to use it. Great news for us is we are, as part of our go-to-market, it is a product-led growth approach, land and expand, right? So behind MagicAttribution, we have 5 or 6 already in the hopper. Because of that OS layer we talked about, it's also a development platform. So we've basically also created our own low-code platform to which we can build on top of. So as we look to build and launch those products that I was talking about, we really only have to build, call it the last 30%. So not only are we having to build, we can build it very efficiently, which means our spend on R&D is very, very low. We can move it along quite quickly. So that's certainly an element. We are getting into place. We've been spending the last couple of months putting this into place, building a solid sales team unit around us that are all coming online now. We've engaged a very well-respected SDR, so inside sales firm that I've known for quite some time. They've been around forever. They're going to deliver qualified, ready to demo prospects, not just leads, educated, ready to demo over the next 12 months, 225 to be specific. We have affiliate programs and referral relationships we've put in place. So it's all about funneling the leads, qualified leads. We have a really great board of advisors, CEOs and CROs of other companies that, that is also part of their charter is to, add enterprise value, right? It's providing advice and counsel to us, but also looking for partnerships that are appropriate for MagicRobot. Companies they're aware of, maybe even themselves, where it's like these are potential customers and they're well educated about the company. So the good news at the end of the day, anybody listening to this, obviously that might be on the investing side. Again, when I looked at this, I invested my own money and I'm investing myself time, right? I can't get that back. I spend it, it's gone. So it's extremely valuable. And I've decided to do this because of the financial health of the company. We do not have some big legacy burn. So when we're talking about how do we grow it, Brian, I always start with what are the burdens to start off with financially, right? Because if you're investing money to grow, you have to account for what are the current burdens. You're bringing in X amount of dollars and you're saying, okay, this is 60 to 70% of it is going into sales and marketing, but really how much of that is going to pay back, I don't know, debt or, you have make payroll, you have big salaries, what have you. We're in a very unique position because of what we talked about before. We just don't have that. Where our burn rate is basically even with our current revenue. And so we are in a very advantageous position. We are starting from ground zero, if you will, from an operation side and a growth side with no burden on our shoulders. So it's only growth. And now what's also wonderful as the CEO, and I put my operator's hat on, right? All I have to focus on is managing that money, getting the most out of the dollar that I can, and growing responsibly, quickly, but responsibly, and getting the most out of every dollar we bring in. Because, look, when you're a founder and you're a young startup company, the early funding is quite expensive, and you can't just throw it around. You can't be bringing in foosball tables and Herman Miller chairs.
No. And you guys are very,
sorry, sorry, buddy. There's no Herman Miller chairs.
My back.
No, but you guys are very strong at that. And even when I made the comment before I brought you in, those are the things like folks can't build unicorns, not because they can't. It's because they run out of time, right? And they run out of time because the money runs out, because the burn is too high, because the salaries are too high, because there's too many other things that need to be paid for that you can't focus on the sales. Generally speaking, if the product is mature and you can focus on the sales, you can work out the CAC if you have a focus on that. And that's what makes me so sure about your company, is that I have 3 of the most mature leaders of an organization. You really have a Fortune 500 board in a startup company with a technology which is absolutely mature. And to your point, even our discussion on the early raises that you're doing, look, 500, 750, a million, we don't need very much. And we're going to throw a bunch of that to lead generation. Like immediately, the bulk of it is going towards lead generation, funnel management, driving sales at the other side. I just got one last question for you. And it's on the sales itself. And maybe it's a fairer question to put to Scott, but when I say you just go from 25 clients to like 250 to 2,500, hey presto, you're a unicorn. Is that correct? Are there just very good economies of scale within the 25 to 250 that suddenly the amount of money they'll spend per client will exponentially increase?
Yes. And part of that has to do with our operating margins, but also, the technology that we're bringing to the table. We know that maybe not competitors, but even those that are perceived competitors, maybe they're offering a piece of what we do. We know what they're charging. It's infinitely more than the first cohort of customers that we brought in, right? Because they're beta. We want to make sure we have referenceable accounts and whatnot. And as I mentioned, a lot of the earlier ones, they added enterprise value for free partnering with Dave and contributing. So, but we are now seeing the evidence of how we know where we can go with our LTV, our average contract value. And we're already moving that direction. So, for example, I won't use names, but, just in the last month, we're signing annual agreements at 20, 25,000, 30,000 a year, depending on enterprise size, and that's 100, 200, 300% of what is being paid by some of the earlier companies.
Okay, fine. So look, so what you're saying is, listen, Brian, we don't need 2,500. We get 2,500, but we don't need it. We could get like 500. We're game on, and to have that valuation, which is what I thought. And so I want to finish the last minute. And look, I've pushed this one a little bit over because I think the information that we're coming out, like if you're investors, you're serious people, you want to make a decision on whether you invest in the right company. I don't hype companies. We don't promote companies. We invest in companies ourselves. I'm not telling anybody to invest here. I'm telling you that given the choice again, I would invest in this in a New York second. There are certain fundamentals of building a startup which, when in place, give the best opportunity to be able to get that 20, 50, maybe even 100 times return. I personally believe in this company. They have all of these fundamentals. Now, I want to just leave on the last, George, for people to be able to contact you, please just give your information. And Dave, we're going to give you the last minute or two so you can share with us what is the world that you see in 7 to 10 years time with MagicRobot in it. And when you say the world, I mean, what is the impact in that world? George, last quick comment from you, please, and your contact details, and then we'll give it to Dave.
Sure. Yeah, Mike, you can contact me at my email address, which is Tierney, TIERNEY.G.2323 at magicrobot.com. And my phone number is 310-923-3450. Again, it's 310-923-3450. 3450.
Awesome. And thank you so much, Dave. You got the floor. The last 2 minutes. Take us home.
Thank you. I have a personal belief, just because I experienced it so much, that the little irritations that are caused by some of our technology just like set people off on the right path on, multiple times a day. And, like we hear about it, like the social media platforms get bagged on, rightfully or otherwise, for, intentionally dragging our emotions down. And I'll tell you, I can read newspapers with a filter and not like freak out, but I will tell you there are some technical glitches that when they happen, have terrible consequences on people. And, that can set them off on the wrong path, and we all start jumbling into each other. And so what I've created these problems as a, technologist at, a company that had 2,000 employees. And it's like, there have been times where we issued something that caused everybody's phone batteries to drain and got them, upset and set on the wrong path for that day. And I am truly of the belief that with some of the additional function that we add to the CRM, and, I'm just assuming that Salesforce has the technology calibrated so that they're getting all the horsepower that they can out of their boxes and the electricity going in, that we're going to enable people to do a lot more with a lot more reliability and a lot more accuracy and stability. So just more of delivering on the promise that we all believe in and have invested in. But it's, when too much services, when too much humanity goes into fixing or enabling technology, I feel like that's this like emotional nadir that we're in as a society, that like technology is bad. You just need tools to fix tools and they're going to break. And then you need tools to regulate those tools. And that, I just don't believe in that. I believe that we can cross a certain threshold and our corporate systems will start running better, and the world will be contributing to it operating in more harmony. And I truly believe that. And I do think that we play an important role in that, because Salesforce plays an important role in that. And I'll give you an example. Just this is because I'm looking for them now to be like, here's what I'm talking about. That recent 4th of July American Airlines scheduling gaffe. I don't know what technology, I have no idea, but my spider sense was tingling on that one. And I'm like, I know the type of mistake that causes that to happen. I've done that like 5 or 6 different ways. And so the root of the 4th of July, and I'm not saying that it created chaos that was completely bad, but like that was not the intention of, American Airlines or its software administrators for, all those pilots to get that day off. I'm kind of glad they did. I kind of like it when everybody's got 4th of July off, but I do believe that as these technologies are in use across our daily lives, to the extent they run as expected, that's the contribution we're going to make. Now, obviously, people's CRMs are going to get better, and CEOs, decision makers are going to have accurate and complete information that they didn't have before.
And that's where, so as a venture capitalist, like you're creating a better world where people emotionally are going to be in a better place, which is actually incredibly important, because technology, we all believe, was brought to the world to make life easier and better for us and to help with decision making. But what's happened is that unless the technology is absolutely perfect, it becomes about our interpretation of the technology, which means the decision making become based on our biases, which means that actually we end up making worse decision making. So I see, to your point, like a world from a VC's perspective, where in boardrooms you've got COOs, you've got CEOs, you've got revenue officers who are coming to the meeting with one truth that allows for better decision making, so that the company has the ability to survive and thrive. And that is a world away from where these companies are now.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because as a practitioner, as an administrator, or somebody that leads that team, when the board's coming together, every department goes on this fire drill mode and they all start compiling their own metrics. And it creates so much stress and work across that organization. So in a MagicRobot organization, the data's just there.
It's gone. It's gone. Listen,
Yeah.
this is the longest podcast I've ever done, ever,
Sorry.
ever, because it's great. And as an investor, you needed the extra 15 minutes to make the right decision, make the right damn decision. You know what to do. Okay. George, thank you so much. Dave, thank you so much. I will tell you, I thank you for letting Expert Dojo invest into you. I know my wife thanks you. My son, he wants to go to a nice school. I'm not going to take him to a nice school, but I'm going to pretend for a while, but he thanks you in the meantime. And my mom for making her proud of her son. She thanks you too. And everybody listening, you know what to do. Thank you, guys.